I think we see Willis coming out.
There he comes right now. 6 feet 10 from Grambling. The captain of the Knicks, the most valuable player of the NBA. Frazier then slows it down. Is picked up by Jerry West at the top of the post. Reed. Good! Willis Reed scores the first bucket here tonight. And Reed now is outside. There's his second shot. He is 2 for 2. Willis Reed.
What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It's your boy, Uncle Fulio, and I'm back with a special edition breaking news episode of the Kontroversy. As always, episodes are sponsored by Nothing But Knicks. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Also, hit the notification bell to be notified anytime we go live. Pre-game coverage, post-game coverage, shoot-around videos, Coach's Corner videos, Queen's Court videos, NBA Report videos. We have it all for you here, right here on MBK. Unfortunately, I'm here to discuss the sad news that we heard earlier today of the passing of Knicks legend, the captain, Willis Reed. And I'm here to discuss that with the Podfather Sim of MBK. So let's get it going. Sim, what's going on?
What's going on, man? Sad news, Knicks fans all over the universe, Knicks universe, Knicks family all over the place. Lost a great one, man. And while I'm smiling, I'm not smiling because he passed away. Obviously, I'm smiling because just smiling. A lot of people do that in the face of adversity.
Right. I hear that. Me too. Initially when I heard the news, I was like, wow, we lost a legend. This is, the day after Julius Randle scores 57 points, and we had the conversation about where Randle ranks on the pantheon of former Knicks. And unfortunately, today we heard the news about the passing of the great Willis Reed. Salute to everybody in the chat that's tuning in, that's watching us. Just, please leave your comments in the chat. Just, let us know how you're feeling based on this news. Put your 19s in the chat if you want to, and let us know how you're feeling. Sim, just off the bat, like, when you talk about Willis Reed, and when we discuss Willis Reed, what's the first thing that pops out in your mind when it comes to the great number 19? Like, what do you think his legacy will be? Not just in the Knicks community, but in the NBA community.
Yeah, I think his legacy everywhere is, when he came back for that Game 7 versus the Lakers. Right? I think that's what everybody remembers about Willis Reed, as far as the NBA community and the Knicks community. But, there's more meat to the background of who he is. I never got a chance to see him play besides old video. You know what I mean? Because I wasn't around then. But, when you watch old video and you hear people talk about who he was and how he was, the leader of the team, and, how he inspired the Knicks to win that championship, just from him coming out of the tunnel, was inspirational. You know what I mean? And anytime a Knicks player gets hurt in the playoffs and then comes down the tunnel to play, the tunnel's in a different place now, but comes down the tunnel to play, people are going to be remembered at that moment. But obviously there's more meat on the bone. A lot of people don't know that he actually coached the Knicks for a season and led the Knicks to a winning season, actually. I think, there were a few games over 500. All right. He was replaced as coach the next season. But, he was once the head coach of the New York Knicks. And then he went on to have a few more assistant coaching jobs in the league. I think he was in the front office of, at that time, the Brooklyn Nets at one point. So, he had a long career in the NBA.
Yeah, long career, definitely. I mean, listen, spent 10 seasons as a New York Knick from 1964 to 1974. Only 10 seasons. Career cut short by injury. I mean, we talk all the time about these athletes who are just really superb at what they do, but they can't be able to finish their careers or take their career to even the next level due to injury, right? And in Willis's case, towards the second half of his career after that first championship, he just was never the same player. Still was productive, still was the captain. And obviously, the team was successful in 1973, winning their second championship, but just, another story about injuries, hampering with, still it was a great, phenomenal career, obviously Hall of Fame, two-time NBA All 75 and top 50 player of all time. But what could have been with Willis Reed. But obviously, sad news around the NBA. There's been a lot of support coming in through the NBA Twitter community and the Knicks community, obviously. Just people wanting to pay their respects to the captain, to Willis Reed. Here, let me just pull up these slides real quick. So Peter Vesey is the one that broke the news. He's the former Knicks beat reporter from the New York Post. He came out with this tweet earlier today. Said he just received word that Willis Reed, 80, passed away this morning. Suffered from congestive heart problems over the past year or so, and was going through rehab to walk again. Loved everything about Willis, and he was a man's man. So yeah, I mean, where were you when you heard the news, Sam? Obviously we didn't see him during the 1973 50th anniversary championship celebration. But what were your thoughts where were you when you first heard the news? And what did you think about? Did you I don't want to say foreseen this coming? We all going to get older at some point, hopefully. But where were you when you heard the news, and what was your initial reaction?
I definitely didn't foresee it coming. To be honest with you, at the point in time that I heard about it, he wasn't even on my mind.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I was with my mother. It was earlier in the day. We were going around doing some, running some errands and things like that. And then I seen it come across my Twitter. The first thing that I thought about though is, how you had Julius Randle last night. Yeah, it was last night, right? Scored 57 points. And when we were in the game, in the post-game show, we were talking about how, he's putting his name on the list of players to be great Knicks. You know what I mean? And I just thought it was kind of ironic that then today, you have a great Knick pass away. You know what I mean? And then I started thinking back to players that I've been able to meet, as, Knick players that I've been able to meet. And I think the most legendary player that I've ever met is Earl Pearl Monroe. And, it just passed through and I was like, man, I, never got a chance to meet Willis Reed. It would have been amazing to have the chance to meet him. So I'm sure all those players who did have a chance to meet him, they look at it and are very appreciative of, having the ability to be around him when he did make his way back to the Garden,
Yeah, I mean, I was at work myself, and I got the tweet, and I just, was stunned by it. But in these times, these type of, tribulating times, I always tend to reflect on, the good part, and he lived a long life, a long basketball life at that. Not to mention back then, you're talking about in the late 60s and the early 70s, where there was a lot of racial strife going on in America and the country. And him being the captain of that Knick team, kind of, that team was more like a microcosm of what Martin Luther King would have wanted. Like, all those players came from different backgrounds, different areas of the country. And they were able to come together to play the prototypical team style of basketball, right? Everyone shared the basketball. The way they played was kind of reminiscent to what Knick fans envision the Knicks always being, sharing the basketball, unselfish, stifling on defense. That team, the 1970 championship team, set the tone for what we want in our Knick team. And I think his leadership, being the leader and the captain of that squad, basically set the trend for what we want, and we hope the Knicks are gonna be in the future. Obviously, a lot of reaction coming in from the NBA again. This is NBA Commissioner Adam Silver. He says, Willis Reed was the ultimate team player and consummate leader. My earliest and fondest memories of NBA basketball of watching Willis, who embodied the winning spirit that defined the New York Knicks championship teams in the early 70s. He played the game with remarkable passion and determination, and his inspiring comeback in Game 7 of the 1970 NBA Finals remains one of the most iconic moments in all of sports. As league MVP, two-time Finals MVP, and a member of the 50th and 75th anniversary teams, Willis was a decorated player who took great pride in his consistency. Following his playing career, Willis mentored the next generation as a coach, team executive, and proud HBCU alumnus. We send our deepest condolences to Willis's wife, Gail, his family, and many friends and fans. And that's from Adam Silver, ladies and gentlemen, commissioner of the NBA, giving his thoughts on the passing of the great Willis Reed at age 80 this morning. So again, and the Knicks also came out with a statement as well. Obviously, he is, a member of a Knicks fraternity. The Knicks organization is deeply, let me just bring that up. Knicks organization is deeply saddened to announce the passing of our beloved captain, Willis Reed. As we mourn, we always strive to uphold the standards he left behind, the unmatched leadership, sacrifice, and work ethic that personified him as a champion among champions. He is a legacy that will live forever. We ask everyone to please respect the family's privacy during this difficult time. So there's a statement from the New York Knicks, basically, wishing their condolences and announcing the passing of Willis Reed. So Sam, let me just ask you, where, and it's, a lot of times when we lose legends, right? In any sport, but in the sports world, we often talk about what their legacy is, on the floor. What do you think Willis Reed's legacy is going to be off the floor? Adam Silver mentioned proud HBCU alumnus. He went to Grambling State, very successful there. What do you think Willis Reed's legacy is off the floor, based on the things that you've read and that you've heard?
I mean, I think, and I was just going to mention that he went to Grambling State, and and it's ironic the Knicks today, and I don't know if it was purposely or not, but they announced the HBCU night, I think against the Houston Rockets coming up. I think his legacy is going to be of a strong Black man with upstanding and outstanding character throughout the league, who, coming up during the time that he came up, had to deal with everything. You know what I mean? Had to deal with racism, and the turbulent times that were here in the country and in America, and was able to succeed despite of it. You know what I mean? And I think that'll be the legacy of him. And he's well regarded throughout the league, throughout the country, of those who, pay attention to athletes. You know what I mean? When you have someone who passes away and you see reports on CNN and Fox News and places like this means that they mean something to people and what they stood for. You know what I mean? And I think that's where he'll be. Jeffrey Clapter said the epitome of class. And yeah, I think that sums it up really well. The epitome of class. That's who he is and what he was.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And Willis, being an HBCU alumnus, there's been a lot of talk and a lot of attention being put on HBCUs now. And I think Willis Reed was one of those pioneers who set the example for, giving back to the community and giving back to HBCUs, based on the stuff that he did on and off the floor. We talk all the time about, culture building. Like, we want this current team to build a culture. Back then in the 70s, based on everything Willis Reed went through and he persevered through, I think he set the tone when the Knicks drafted him back in 1964 or 65. I forget exactly what it was. He set the tone for that team, right? And for those winning ways, he was the one that basically had to endure, and he taught the young players coming up after him, Clyde, basically how to be able to be a professional and how to win. Right. And Clyde talks about it all the time. We see it on MSG broadcast. He said he showed up to New York, got off the airplane, and when Willis Reed came to pick him up. Right. And that basically started, the winning ways in New York. You know what I mean? So definitely rest in peace to Willis Reed. Let me just go ahead and pull up his numbers here. Willis Reed, the captain, two-time NBA champion, obviously 1970, 1973. He won NBA Finals MVP in both of those finals as well. NBA Most Valuable Player in 1970, the only most valuable player or NBA MVP in the history of the team. Seven-time NBA All-Star, 7 straight years from 1965 to 1971. NBA All-Star Game MVP in 1970. The trend is there, 1970, folks, which is a special year in the history of the Knicks, and one of the I guess great years that any athlete can have in their particular sport, winning MVPs in All-Star Game, the finals, and during the regular season. All NBA first team that same year as well. And when he didn't make the All-NBA first team, he made the NBA All-Second team, right? So he was one of the top 15 players in the NBA during his era for the majority of his tenure, and he made the second team 5 times as well. During his rookie season in 1965, Rookie of the Year and the All-Rookie team. So this is a career, excuse me, this is a career that a lot of the great players, want to emulate, or the players that want to be great. You have, they want to emulate these type of accolades and these types of numbers, right? So just off of that, I mean, I know at the time when Willis Reed's retirement, he was considered the best player in team history. But then when Patrick Ewing retired and we retired Patrick Ewing's number, he said out of his mouth that Patrick Ewing was the greatest player in history. But I think Willis's legacy as far as playing and him being such a great player goes a little bit deeper than that. If you notice the way Willis played back in the day, he was one of the first centers to step out and take that jump shot.
Mm-hmm.
Back then, the centers were in the paint, banging around, grabbing a bunch of rebounds, which Willis did as well. I think he had a 30-30 game in the playoffs at one point. But Willis was, as we've seen in that clip when he came out on the floor, his only 2 shots he made in that game 7 were 2 jump shots. And back then, that was very unheard of for big men to do that. Now you're seeing that happen every single day with big men in the NBA. Patrick Ewing, one of his patented moves is 18, 20 feet away, knocking that smooth jump shot down. So Willis Reed really set a trend in the NBA. This is not someone who just, got all the accolades. He actually did something and changed the game based on the way he played. What do you think about that, Sam?
Nah, I agree with you 100%. He was, maybe a little bit undersized at the center spot when you had to deal with a guy like Wilt Chamberlain.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? So he was a little bit undersized, which, maybe allowed him to step out a little bit better, because back then centers were not accustomed to coming out and defending, even 20 feet away from the basket. You know what I mean? So his ability to be able to do that, of course, then opened up the floor for Clyde and Earl the Pearl to be able to get to the basket and, so on and so forth. So, definitely, trend center on and off the court. Willis Reed,
Nope.
he's going to be, he's going to be surely missed, even though, he wasn't able to be around as much because he was dealing with sickness and things like that. His impact and influence on the Garden, on the Knicks organization is going to last forever.
And the Knicks also came out today and said that tomorrow's game against Miami, they're going to have full-time, MSG Network they're going to have full-time coverage of Willis Reed and his career and his legacy. So definitely stay tuned for that. Sam, you mentioned that, he wasn't able to be around as much lately due to health problems, things like that. The Knicks, what they did during the championship celebration, the 50th anniversary, was they played a video of Willis Reed on the big board for everyone to see. Obviously, he couldn't be there in person. He also couldn't be at the NBA 75th anniversary celebration as well. So I'm going to play that video right now.
I just wish I could be with you. I just want to say that I'm so proud that I was a member of the championship team in the best city in the world with the best fans in the world. Enjoy the party without me, and I hope to see you soon.
Number 19.
Number 19, yes.
Number 19. Number 19.
Right, definitely. Put your number 19s in the chat, everyone that's out there watching. So Sam, Willis Reed retired in 1975, right? The following season, he was able to get his number retired by the New York Knicks, number 19, as we all spoke about. And then the following year after that, he went into coaching. He was the coach of the Knicks for that year, going into the late 70s. And that basically started the second half of his basketball career, right? Going from a player, obviously had some down years towards the end of his career, due to injury and stuff like that, but then started as a coach and then going into an executive position with the New Jersey Nets. How do you think his years as a coach and an executive, how do you think that I think that started a trend as well. You had Bill Russell, right? Bill Russell was a player coach.
Bill Russell was a player coach, right?
Towards the end of his career. And then, you've seen Bill Russell, and when Bill Russell was head coach of Sacramento, Willis Reed was his assistant, right? So how do you think that transition going from being a player to being a coach? I know you've done it, right? I did it when I initially left my playing days. I went to coach. What do you think that means, going from being someone that's in the locker room as a player to going to transition as a coach and then an executive?
Yeah, I think, especially someone like Willis Reed who won championships. So you know what it takes to win the championship as a player, right? Now, obviously, when you leave that seat from, when you stop being a player and you start coaching, you realize the other duties that are involved and how difficult it is to handle those responsibilities, handle player personalities and those things. But the experience that you have as a player and being able to understand what the players are going through, especially during that time. Even during that time in the late 70s, there was still, uh, you know, civil issues to deal with. You know what I mean? That, he, given his background, could impart knowledge on players who were coming up during that time. You know what I mean? So I think it really is big, and it's one of the reasons why you see it around the league so much. So many players, former players, becoming coaches because they have the experience. They know what it's like. Uh, they know what it's like to be a young player. They know what it's like to be an aging player, and to have to mentor somebody who's coming up. You know what I
Right.
mean? And so they're able to impart that knowledge on, the players who are coming up in the league, the players that they're coaching, or uh, the players that they're managing, if they're in the executive office, so on and so forth. You know what I mean? So I think even if they're not the head coaches, I think it is important to have former players around uh, your current players. You know what I mean? Around your current players, if you can have them as assistant coaches or whatever it is, I think it's really important to have them guys around. And a guy like Willis Reed, knowing, the legacy that he left in the league as a player, someone who steered away from controversy and, what I mean, and controversy as far as, just being a person and getting in, that kind of trouble.
A
Stayed
professional
away,
on and off the floor.
right? Always professional. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Having, a guy like him around your players is unspeakable.
Yeah, I agree, and that's one of the reasons why I personally got myself into coaching. I wanted to give back. I know, obviously my playing days are going to be over at some point. You can't play forever, but I love the game so much, and I know Willis loved the game that much that he wanted to go back and give back to the game and mentor a lot of young players that were coming up. Um, Willis got a chance to not only be a teammate of Walt Frazier, but he also coached him. He also coached Earl Monroe, right? And that
Right.
part of it, right? And then obviously as time goes on, moved on to different opportunities, and now Ben became an executive, right? So, just that progression and that constant, always willingness to give back and give back to the game. That's something I'm always going to take from
Yeah.
that. As far as Willis Reed, I know, I kind of should have brought this up earlier, but the competition that Willis faced back then, you're talking the NBA used to be a big man's game, right? And Willis Reed was probably the most undersized, or one of the most undersized big men of all time, but really great at what he did. You're talking Bill Russell, the latter years of Bill Russell, and the Celtics passing the torch to the Knicks at that point, right? You're talking Nate Thurman. You're talking Lou Alcindor, young buck from
Mhm.
just fresh out of UCLA, going to Milwaukee now. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, obviously. Wilt. Talk about some of the adversity, or as far as the on-court adversity and the competition that Willis had to face, because it wasn't easy.
No, I mean, when you think about it back then, I mean, that was a different style of play, right? Because it was, I don't want to say all about the big man, but back then, your guards weren't as crafty as they are now. You weren't shooting a three-pointer.
Right.
You know what I mean? So everything was about getting as close to the basket as possible. And your big guys like a Willis Reed and I mean, Lou Alcindor wasn't as physical as some of these other guys. The Bill Russells out there. I mean, these guys were battling down low. You know
Bob
what I mean?
Lanier, Wes
Right.
Unseld.
These guys were battling, and they came from a different era of basketball where today guys want to be in the gym in the air condition, working on their game, right? They got trainers, they're in the gym, boom, 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 and they come out like, I just put in all this work. These guys were brought up on the concrete. You know what I mean? I'm just a different mentality altogether with the style and the way that they played basketball. Earl Pearl Monroe was known in Philadelphia from being on the court, Black Jesus, from being on the court in Philadelphia. You understand what I'm saying?
Oh
Like
yeah.
that's where they played, and that's where they built their rep before they went on to college and got into the league. And you know what kind of game is out there on the blacktop. So these guys came from they really came from a different era of basketball, more aggressive, more physical. And I mean, not just aggressive and physical. I don't know the word that I'm looking for to explain it. But it was meaner and tougher, in my opinion.
Right.
Back then, even though you look at the '90s and there were a lot of fights and things like that. Okay, that's one thing. But these guys did it without the fights. I mean, of course there were fights. There's always gonna be fights. They did it without the fights. It wasn't, any gangster stuff or anything like that. It was just hard nosed basketball. You know what I'm
Put
saying?
your hard hat on, lunch pail.
Yeah, and you had to be a man's man to play. So
Yeah.
he came up in a really tough era of basketball, and to be able to excel and be an MVP, be Rookie of the Year, All NBA player, it's that's big time.
Yeah, like I said, the only MVP in the history of the franchise. I don't think we've had. I think Carmelo, got close. I think he was like third in voting one
Yeah.
year. Randall's
Yeah.
seventh this year, right? But Willis Reed actually won MVP, Most Valuable Player. Well, mostly centers were winning it back then. And I think the year he won MVP was the second year of the MVP award itself, right? The previous year it went to Jerry West, right? Oh no, sorry, Finals MVP. He won Finals MVP. That was the second year of the Finals MVP award. Willis Reed is the first player in NBA history to win multiple Finals MVPs. Before him, there was no one else that did that, right? And then Magic came in the '80s, and then you got Jordan, and then Shaq, Kobe, and things like that. So he set that trend in an era where it was tough at his position, where it was very, very tough to be able to go out and do work, and he did it, right? We talk about the year 1970, basically won every major award that year, and then finished it off with a championship. That's the closest thing to a perfect season as I think anyone would ever see from a particular athlete in their sport, right? Won the championship, in the fashion that he won the championship at home, MVP, Finals MVP, All-Star MVP, All NBA first team. I mean, you name it, he won it that year, right?
Yeah.
So big ups to Willis Reed. Dwayne Dennis says, Sim just highlight that comment. He said that's not 100% true, Sim. There was some really great guards playing back then on every team. What do you got to say about that? I know you started.
And I'm not saying that there weren't great guards. Obviously, there were great guards back. I mean, you got Walt Clyde Frazier, Earl Pearl Monroe. They were great guards. They played a different style. You know what I mean? You look at the guards today, the footwork has grown, the athleticism has grown. All of those things have grown and developed over time. And then there wasn't a 3-point shot. So when I talk about the guards, I'm not saying that they weren't good guards. I'm saying the style of play was different, which geared it more towards focusing on the big man and trying to pound that ball inside to get closer to the rim. You know what I'm saying? Because it was a little bit tougher to maybe get to the basket for your guards back then because, the defense really doesn't change as much. Offense has grown and changed. You know what I mean? You've had hand checking back then and things like that were allowed. So, I think it was a little bit tougher for guards to just break the defense down and get to the basket, but the big man was inside already. You know what I mean? So the more size you had, they were looking for players that had size so that they could be closer to the basket. That's
Almost every big man was a two-way big man, right? Offensively, the big man can be able to go down low and do work, and defensively, stalwarts, like all those big men that I mentioned, those centers that I mentioned back then, right? I think the game, and I think Sam, you're absolutely correct. The game was built around the big man. Literally, you throw the ball down low and then let the big man go to work if you want to go get yourself a bucket. It wasn't as prevalent. The guard play wasn't as prevalent around the ball dominant guard play wasn't as prevalent as it is now than it was back then. Now it's much more ball dominant from the guards. Back then, it was the center's job to go ahead and set that tone, right?
Yeah.
So I agree with Sim on that standpoint. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, we are talking about the life and legacy of number 19, the captain, Willis Reed. Let me just read some more of these comments real quick, and then we're going to get out of here. It's going to be a short show. The Public Enemy number 1 says, I'm watching some of the Atlanta-Detroit game, and Dominique Wilkins talked about Willis Reed, Hall of Famer, obviously. Bomani UFG says, almost 13 rebounds a game for his career, 19 points per game, average double for his career. Yeah. Yep. Salute to Jay Boogie. He said 19 roses, 19 roses, 19. Rest in heaven. Mr. Grambling State University will always honor your legacy. Salute to Jay Boogie. Jeffrey Clafter said no 3-pointers either, so packing the paint was more prevalent. Keith Turner said, I did a book report on Willis Reed in high school and got an A+ for it. I remember jumping around the room thanking him for that grade. Yeah, so Sam, I just wanted to get on for a short show to talk about the life and legacy of Willis Reed. Any final words you want to say before we close it out?
No, you know, I feel honored that, like I say to, players, anyone that asks me, how am I doing today? I always say I'm doing good, no matter what happens for that day. I'm doing good because I woke up, right? And that's always my response. As long as I wake up, I'm doing good. Any other obstacles during the day, I can get over those. I'm just blessed, and I feel honored to wake up every day. You know what I mean? So I'm glad that I'm here and I can speak about Willis Reed. I may not have been able to see him play, in person or actually witness it up close as a fan back then, but I can admire and love him from a distance. You know what I mean? So I'm grateful that I'm able to honor Willis Reed today, and look at and reflect on the legacy that he's going to have or he has had on the NBA, on the New York Knicks, and on all of us fans, man. Because, when you look at Knicks fans, it's like the New York Knicks are the base and we're an extended family. You know what I mean? So it always hurts when you lose a legend like that. And especially for those who are, were able to watch him play and experience it at that time. You know what I mean? For me, it's going to be like losing a Patrick Ewing.
Right.
You know what I mean? You're a little closer to those players because you got a chance to see them play. So, I feel for those players, but I send my condolences to his family. And the one thing that I know, though, is, when you have someone like a Willis Reed who is going to be, remembered by millions, nothing's going to, it takes away the sting a little bit, at least. Just knowing that this person is going to be remembered as a great man by millions of people. So,
yeah, Sam, I agree with you. I just want to say, as a Navy guy, I got to say this: fair winds and following seas to the captain. You will be missed. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. It's been another episode of The Kontroversy, and the captain, your legacy will always live on. One.